In today's video, I'm going to show you guys how to turn a song that sounds like this
I remember looking in your eyes, thinking that tonight was the night.
into a fully produced track that sounds like this.
I remember looking at the look in your eyes, thinking that tonight was the night. Telling me you're ready, am I ready or not? I remember.
What's up, y'all? My name is Forrest Whitehead, and I'm a songwriter-producer here in Nashville, and I created this YouTube channel to show the songwriter at home how to produce better sounding records. In today's video, over the next 45 minutes, I'm going to take you guys on a full production journey, step by step, how to produce a pop country track. I'm going to cover how to get my production started, what synths I like to use, tracking guitars, vocals, all the way to mixing and mastering your song. And you'll want to stay to the very end of the video, because along the way I'm going to be sharing a few secrets that will help make it a lot easier for you to get pro sounding tracks from your home studio. Let's go ahead and hop in.
Leaning up the windows in the slip of a dress, leaning back the seat, and no, I'll never forget. 16th of September. I remember.
Usually whenever you finish writing your song, you're going to want to make a quick work tape of your song. When it comes to recording your work tape, I always encourage you to record it to a BPM. So go ahead and find the BPM of your song, download a Metronome app. This app is Pro Metronome. It doesn't have to be this one, but it's really important for you to be able to lock in the tempo as soon as possible in your session. So I just want to make sure that I hear my click track or my metronome, so I want to make sure that that's selected on. And now I can dial this work tape in and line it up on the grid. So let's do that real quick. All right, so I can tell that's a little bit off. So let me go ahead and trim this work tape up, and I'm going to deselect here so I can go ahead and drag this wherever I want on the grid. And the whole point is to get a good, comfortable count in position and then start your work tape on the one there. Let's listen here. 1, 2, 3, 4, start. This is where I want my track to start. So I'll just go ahead and add a marker here for verse. And for right now, our work tape just starts cold on the first verse. So let me just line it up on this downbeat right here.
Was it a photo Chevy when we pulled off on?
So what I'm listening for here is to make sure that the metronome is lined up with my work tape, because since we cut our work tape to a click, we can go ahead and start lining up our production much more easily and just dive into the production of this thing pretty quick. You know, just to kind of get things started here, I'm just going to pull up a simple synth. This could be whatever you want it to be. I usually choose a melodic instrument just to kind of get things going, like an electric piano. And I've got Contact 7 here, so let me go ahead and pull up a new sound. All right, that's pretty cool. Basically what I'm going to do is just take a pass going through my full work tape and going through my chord progressions. And while I do this, I'll just kind of be thinking about where I want to take this production, how I want to start the song. I may try a couple different chord progressions, and I probably won't show me go through this whole part here, but just to kind of give you an idea of how I start my song with getting just a basic melodic texture down, and then we're going to hop into drums.
All I know was it was something. Could have been tequila. Wasn't your go-to cheap real wine? And now when I taste it, it still gets me every time. If you still wonder, if I still wonder.
Chorus.
I remember looking.
And then as I'm taking this part, I may map up my session as well. So I'll start with my markers here. It's just going to help you navigate your production so much more if you go ahead and add these markers in there. So I really encourage you to do it. So let's go ahead and continue mapping this melodic instrument out.
I remember looking at the look in your eyes, thinking that tonight was the night. Telling me you're ready, if I'm ready or not. I remember saving up the windows in the slip of your dress, slaying in the sea so you can lay on my chest. No one ever forget. 16th of September. I remember.
All right, cool. And that was the turn. And that way I know verse 2 starts here. I'm going to go ahead and fly this to the other part of the song, because I know verse 2 is the same length as verse 1. except for I think the chorus comes in a bar earlier. And that's pretty much the whole purpose of going ahead and laying a simple melodic element, figuring out what your chords are, kind of gathering your thoughts on where you want this production to go. Once I have my Worktape locked to the grid and I start with some type of melodic instrument enough to get my session mapped up, now it's time to hop into drums. We're going to start with the Butch Vig drums. I'm going to use that sound just to get a rhythmic movement happening just right at the top there. Here, I'll give it a little bit of quantize, and I'll simply duplicate it around my track because this is going to be something that just kind of goes throughout the whole song. The next thing that I want to do here, and the next sound that I'm rolling with, this Thomas Pridgeon kit. I spent a lot of my beginner years as a producer struggling with drum sounds, and in recent years with great tones coming from mixed wave, man, they make it so easy just to get a killer drum sound right out of the box here. Alright, now that I've done that much, I'll go ahead and just go in here and give it a little bit of quantize. And one thing to note here, you don't want to quantize 100%. If I zoom in, you can see that some of these drums are not played right at the exact same time. And if I quantize everything at 100%, it just sounds too robotic. So I want to go into my quantize settings, take down my intensity to about 70%. And so whenever I highlight everything here, and I hit the Q button to quantize, it's not going to pull it all directly on the grid. You know, you're going to have some notes that are still a little bit ahead here, just like you see, and you're going to have some notes that maybe fall behind even, just like these. But that's okay, because that's what makes MIDI drums sound like it was played by a real drummer. As I take the chorus, I want to go to different cymbals, and just kind of get a different variation, and notice that on some of the kicks, I'm adding extra kicks there. I may even try to add a drum fill. Let's check it out. I'll have to go through and make a couple of minor edits, but that's okay. We've got the idea down. I like to make sure that I'm only editing once. So before I fly any drums, I want to make sure that I get most of my edits done. Now that I know that chorus 1 is hitting pretty good, we can fly that to chorus 2. Now the next part of this will be adding a couple more samples. And I want to show you guys a secret on some of the best samples out there. If you just Google country hits with a Z, you're going to go to this website right here. And for 25 bucks, you're going to get these drum samples. Now, I have no affiliation with them. I need to reach out to them. I think that these guys make some of the best samples here. So if you download this $25 drum sample library, you'll be able to get some of the samples that I'm about to show you here. But now that I have it on my desktop, I'll just Google hits and these drums come up. And I've got my favorites highlighted here. These are common sounds that I use pretty much every session, and these are really going to fill out our drums. So I want to go ahead and drag these sounds throughout my session so you can hear what I'm talking about. Love that. So make sure at the top of each chorus there's a crash. And then we have this fall sound here, which is tight. So it's these type of sounds like this. Those type of big verb claps. Now this is not going to be super loud in the mix, but just this presence sunk down in there at the right level is really going to bring an impact to our chorus. It's these type of sounds that you really don't know are in a track until you hear them separated out like this. I really think adding something like a real shaker brings a realism to your tracks that you can't get through a plug-in. So that's what we're going to do next. So after I get done laying my shaker tracks in, I'm pretty much going to take maybe a 4 or 8 bar loop of the best performed section of this. So let's just say for an example, it's this section. I would delete this And that's pretty much all that I would need out of these shakers. And I could pretty much, if I wanted to, give it a cue and quantize these, make them more in time, and then fly these individual parts anywhere in my session that I like. But one thing that I want to show you guys, this is by far one of my favorite plugins because it really makes it easier to get shakers into your tracks really quick. So let me go ahead and lay a pass of Shimmer Shake Strike, that way you can hear what it brings. This sound is really going to lift our chorus out of the mix. It's usually what I find myself doing is I always use the Shimmer Shake plugin, but if I want to add an extra layer of realism to the mix, I'm going to add a real shaker on top of the MIDI shaker, and that's just going to make my mix come to life. So once I've got my Worktape locked to the grid, I like to start out with a simple melodic instrument just to get the chords into my song. Then I quickly move to producing drums. Now once my drums are feeling right, I'll go back and add even more MIDI instruments. I find that if you keep it MIDI early on in your production, this makes it more easy to up the tempo or up the key if you need to. But let's go ahead and keep things moving here by adding a few more MIDI synths. And this preset right here is just kind of like a Juno synth. And this is similar to the sound that we started off with. These type of pads really take up a lot in the lower mid frequency range, and that's what I like to go for whenever it comes to adding pads here. Awesome, so I'll go ahead and give that just a little bit of quantize. Just kind of go through a couple more of these sounds. This is augmented voices. So again, at parts in the song, I want to have a different texture of just kind of like this droning note of the root note of our song. So I mean, I'm just playing a very simple part here. I'm only voicing like 2 notes out of the chord, but this is going to be really nice at the top of our chorus. Check it out. And I want this sound to stop right there, and I'm trying to create a separation in my chorus with these pads. That means on the back half of my chorus, most of these pads won't be there. But let's go ahead and move on, and I wanted to also show you guys this augmented strings. And what I look for in some of my pads is just this ever-evolving sound. So I know if I hold this note that it intensifies, there's some type of reverb. There's a reverb trail if I let off the note, and that's what I like to use for transitions in my song. So I'll go to anywhere where it's going from a verse to a chorus and maybe add this type of string transition, only for that moment. We're not going to lay this all through the chorus, just on the transition. And so you'll notice we have a couple of different pads that are playing very similar notes. Moving right along here, one of my favorite synths is this Pigments pad. And so you hear all the modulation tail that's happening to that synth. And again, that's what I look for. In the same way we use augmented strings for a transition, we're now going to use this Pigments pad. And this is going to be a second transition. Maybe we'll use this going from verse 2 into chorus 2. Now going to our bridge section, I'm going to add that same Pigments synth from our bridge into our last chorus. So once I have a sound that I like to go ahead and commit all of my pads to audio. So that way, you know, I can take it, I can reverse it, I could do all these types of things with the pad audio now and have more control over it rather than just leaving it MIDI. We're going to use this retrospective piano to kind of get one more pluck layer happening in verse 2. And again, we're going to get it gone, chorus 2, and go back to that other pluck that we decided in keyscape. We're flying through these keys, but let's go ahead and add a couple more here. Usually what I like to do to really separate the chords in my chorus is have just a standard piano. Now this is from the Arturia piano version 3. This is the Japanese grand, and we're just going to go ahead and separate our chorus a little bit more by having the piano pulse on some of these chords. And we'll fly that to each chorus there. I have one more synth that I want to show you guys. Now this is kind of an extreme synth, and this is not necessarily a sound that you would associate with pop country, but I want to show you guys how you can use an odd synth sound and for it to make sense in your production. So check this tone out. I found this sound just digging through Pigment's presets. Having this percussive type of rhythmic synth will really set the top of our chorus off. So check it out. Now again, keep in mind, I know it sounds a little extreme now, but this is going to be mixed really low. Actually, you know what? I think we can add a walk down here. I really dig how that turns out, so I want to fly that to the top of every single chorus. And as we get to the end of producing our synths, let's go ahead and do the same thing that we did with the drums. We're going to highlight them all. We're going to pack a folder here, and I'm going to call this Synths, Keys, and we will also add a bus channel just to make sure they're all the same color. Go ahead and color them light brown just like that. I like to start with MIDI pads because when it comes to this point, we can still change the tempo, we can change the key of the song. I haven't laid in a bunch of audio yet where it would be a big deal, where if we needed to up the tempo or the key of this thing, if we wanted to have a different singer come in on it. I'm pretty happy with how everything's sitting with the key and the tempo right now, so I think it's ready for some bass guitar. So let's hop into that next. Alright, the next thing that I want to hop into is lay a couple acoustic instruments. First I'm going to start with the acoustic guitar, then we may throw a mandolin and maybe a resonator on here as well. Another common production trick that I like to do is double a part with a higher instrument. So that same acoustic part, I'm going to double it with this 6-string mandolin. And this is kind of what it sounds like. So whenever it comes to after the first chorus and into verse 2, you're going to hear this instrument. And keep in mind, this is also going to be the only spot in the mix that I add the resonator guitar. Moving right along, we're going to jump to the electric guitars, and I've got Guitar Rig 6 pulled up here, and I've got pulled up the second preset right as you pull up the plugin. It's Basic Chicago. This is what it sounds like. Killer guitar tone. This guitar part's going to be pretty simple. We're going to come in at the top of the chorus, and I'm also going to give a melody in between the strums. Here's how it sounds in the mix. This distorted guitar tone is going to help separate our chorus from the beginning to the B section, because we're going to really chill out on that B section and maybe just do the same thing that the acoustic guitars are doing. Let's go ahead and go to chorus 2 and take that part again. After the main electric guitar, the only thing that I feel like this track needs is a solo part. So again, I have Guitar Rig 6 pulled up, and I have the 80s Stadium rig pulled up. This is what it sounds like. So a really nice solo tone there. If it's a melody that you can sing back, that's the type of things that I like to add in my track. So you're not going to see me doing a lot of crazy licks in my songs, more than I will be doing a simple melodic riff. So that's what I encourage you to try in your own tracks. All right, up to this point, we've got most of our production done. The only thing left is we got to get a lead vocal in this thing. So let's go ahead and knock out this lead vocal, maybe add a few harms so we can move forward with mixing.
I remember looking at the look in your eyes, thinking that you're thinking that tonight was the night, telling me you're ready, am I ready or not? I remember steaming up the windows in the slip of a dress, leaning back to sleep. No, I'll never forget, 16th of September, I remember.
So I'm going to go ahead and track it up to that point, sing it through 2 or 3 more times, and then we'll comp up something real quick.
Now when I taste it, it still gets me every time. I still wonder if you still wonder. I remember looking at the look in your eyes.
So I wanted to take a minute and tell you a quick story about how the song featured in this video came about. I get a phone call one day from a friend of mine, Robin Collins. She says, "Hey, you ever heard of David Nell?" who's a huge country artist here in Nashville. There's several songs, several hits that you probably heard of. Here's a quick video clip of us recording the work tape the day of the session.
I remember looking at the look in your eye, thinking that you're thinking that tonight was the night.
After I recorded David's vocal at the session, I went back to my home studio and cranked out a track as fast as I could. I love being able to share sessions like this with my production students, so if that sounds interesting to you, make sure I have your contact email at musiccityplaybook.com and we'll stay in touch. So now that I've got a lead vocal, let's go ahead and add a harmony.
I remember looking at the look in your eyes, thinking that you're thinking that tonight was the night, telling me you're ready, am I ready or not? I remember steaming up the windows in the slip of a dress, leaning back to seat, no I'll never forget, 16th of September, I remember.
Yeah, I really feel like in the B section of this chorus, it needs some lower vocals added. So that's what we're gonna do real quick.
You ready, am I ready or not? I remember, steaming up the windows in the slip of a dress, leaning back to seat, no I'll never forget, 16th of September.
Usually with lower doubles, I like to go ahead and double up that harm, that way it can be wide panned. So let's do that now.
I remember, steaming up the windows in the slip of a dress, leaning back to seat, no I'll never forget, 16th of September, I remember.
All right, so let's just take a listen to what we've created here with this 3-part harmony.
I remember looking at the look in your eyes, thinking that you're thinking that tonight was the night, telling me you're ready, am I ready or not? I remember, steaming up the windows in the slip of a dress, leaning back the seat, no I'll never forget, 16th of September, I remember.
You know, these vocals aren't perfect. There's some pitch and some timing issues, but I think they're good enough to go ahead and move forward with the track. All right, so since we made it this far, we can go ahead and get rid of our work tape. We don't need it anymore. But just for perspective, let's just take a listen to where we started.
Wasn't your go-to cheap red wine?
Yeah, what we're working with now.
Could have been the tequila. Wasn't your go-to cheap red wine?
Really no comparison. So let's go ahead, disable this track. We'll hide it as well, and I'm doing that with a right click, and I'll just get it out of our session for right now. And you notice that I've got everything stacked up in these folder stacks. Sometimes they're called group tracks, sometimes they're called track stacks, depending on what DAW that you use. Once you get to the mixing process, go ahead and organize all of your sounds with a similar color and just a similar category. So I have my guitars broken up from electrics to acoustics, but for the most part, all my drums, all my keyboards and synths are in one spot, and this is going to help me mix a whole lot faster. So first thing that we're going to do here is just solo up our drums. Every drum bus loves distortion, so let's go ahead and pull up Saturn 2 here, and I've got a favorite preset. We'll go to Brutal Compressor, and I'm going to mix this in. So a quick A-B there. Let me just go ahead and bring back a little bit of the level. But it really just lifts the whole drum kit out of the speakers. This is without it. Here's with it. Awesome, so just a little bit of saturation on the drum bus, and I always like to follow it up with this L2. Usually I'm ending most of my bus mixes with an L2 Ultra Maximizer. So you'll notice I'll pull it down until I start seeing some gain reduction there, and then now I can lift this out ceiling to a level that fits right. I'm applying a little bit of this T-Rack EQ. This is a Pultec style EQ, so I'm just finding the low frequency. I want to boost it a little bit, and this EQ is really cool because you can also cut as well as boost, and that's what gives you an interesting tone. So I'm going to mess around with these settings and get this bass sitting pretty good. And similar thing, after a little bit of compression, a little bit of saturation, we'll follow it up with the L2. Let's go ahead and give a listen to what's happening on our synth and keys bus. So first thing that we're going to do here is come in with a little bit of EQ, and I'm going to use this SSL EQ because we really don't need all this extra low stuff. Maybe we can brighten it up a little bit, just for a little bit of presence. All right, now that I got some EQ and a little bit of tape, we're going to follow it up with a little bit of compression. All right, that's looking pretty good. So let's go ahead and move on to the acoustics here. I'm really going to take that mandolin part and send it to a big verb. So check this out. That's really going to give a personality to that verse. Awesome, moving right along, let's head over to the electrics. So there's a couple parts that I really want to be aware of, and of course that's going to be the solo section. I want to make sure everything's on top here. So let's go here first and just take a listen. Let's give it some more red light distortion. That really helps it to get to cut. Let's just hear what's going on with it. Yet another example of how doubling the same part can really help it stand out in the mix. Check out these 3 electric guitar parts here for this solo. If I take the doubles out, you still have the solo, but it just doesn't sit as wide in the mix. So instead of trying to achieve that through plugins, I'll double the part, and then now check this out. Really dig that. I don't know if we need the end of that lick. Let's go ahead and mute that and just see how this fits in the track. All right, I really love where those electrics are sitting. So last but not least, let's hop over to the vocals, and then we'll do a quick master on this thing. I think we'll have this track finished up and sounding great. Now, just like I was treating the instruments, all of my vocals are going to be stacked into this folder right here. And so I've got my lead vocal, I've got a couple of harmonies, and a couple of wide pan doubles. And so that's all I need really for a basic demo of a song. But now that they're stacked in a folder stack, I can go ahead and apply EQ to all of them and do the same thing with compression and so forth. So let's start with this SSL EQ here, make sure we don't have anything going on the low end that we don't need. And see, if you don't do this, there's a lot going on bouncing around in this low frequency area that could really clutter your track. So this is the first thing I always encourage you to do. Thinking that you're thinking that tonight was the night, telling me you're ready, am I ready? And another cool trick is to give a little boost. You know, not much, but just around 4, 3, 4, 5K. Sometimes that's nice for a vocal, and it's going to depend on your specific vocal, the microphone, the room it was recorded in, on where this bump should live, but just kind of float around and see where the sweet spot is. I remember looking at the look in your eyes, thinking that you're thinking that tonight was the night. So I kind of like it even a little bit higher, around 6 or 7. So I'm going to have a little bump there. Telling me you're ready, am I ready or not? I remember. Increasing the high frequencies like that will really allow your vocal to poke out of your mix. Just make sure that you're not doing it too much where your vocal gets brittle. So let's go ahead and hear how it sits in context with the mix. The next plugin that's going to go on this vocal chain is we're going to follow it up with a little bit of compression here. I'm going to make sure that I'm not taking off any more gain than 2 or 3 dB. Check it out.
thinking that tonight was the night. Telling me you're ready, am I ready or not? I remember steaming up the windows with the slip of a dress, leaning back the seat, and no, I'll never forget. 16th of September, I remember.
And one thing that you might notice whenever it comes to mixing vocals, I'm going to be using a lot of different types of reverbs. And we'll dive further into this on a different video, but for the sake of showing you how you can use automation to kind of bring life to certain parts of your song. I want this vocal to kind of really dry up on the down chorus. So I can take all the reverbs and all of the delays and take them down as a whole just for that moment of the song. So right here, this is what I'll do. I'll highlight everything in this area and I'll simply pull it down. Now this is taking care of every single reverb in my session, every single delay is being affected right here. Because I just don't want it that wet in the mix for this moment.
Steaming up the windows with the slip of a dress, leaning back the seat, and no, I'll never forget.
You can even do like a little swoop up in here. That's what we could try.
Never forget, 16th of September. I remember looking at the...
And the same thing, now that we're on this last chorus, maybe we want to accent it even more on this last chorus. Usually the last chorus is the biggest moment of the song, so why not have an extra bit of reverb and delay happening there? So again, this is a very quick way of just showing you guys the power of automation. Of course, we could do this for volume all throughout our track, but I really encourage you to check out what kind of creative things you could come up with automating your reverbs and your delays on your lead vocals. All right, so the very last part of your production is going to be applying some type of master to your track. So check this out. I'm going to use just a regular stock compressor here, because again, this is bus compressing. We're just going to knock off about 2 or 3 dB.
I'll never forget, 16th of September.
All right, so what I'm about to show you on this next plugin is kind of a cheat code. What this plugin is going to do is make it super easy for us to get our track mastered. So let's go to the loudest part of our track. I'm going to go to the master assistance on this plugin. On these modules here, I usually keep it modern, medium, and streaming, the way it comes. I'll just go ahead and select next, and then I'll play the audio. So through its algorithm, it's going to calculate everything that it needs, whether it be a little bit of EQ, more compression. This is really the easy button to mastering your tracks. You heard that volume jump there. So it's very common for me, after I hear what Ozone does, is I'll come to this limiter and just take back the threshold a little bit, because I want the effect just a little bit more subtle than what it goes ahead and gives me here.
I remember looking at the look in your eyes, thinking that tonight was the night, telling me you're ready, am I ready or not? I remember.
So notice whenever I pull that threshold down, it has less of an effect. Very last but not least, we're going to follow up with this L2 Ultra Maximizer one more time. So let's go to chorus 3, and same thing, we're going to make sure we're not knocking off more than 2 or 3 dB here.
You're ready, am I ready or not? I remember.
And just make sure that our level meter is hitting where we want it. If I were sending this on to mastering, I'd want to stay at least -6, -3. But since I'm mastering the song with Ozone, we're going to try to get as close to this 0 as possible. But check this out.
I remember looking at the look in your eyes, thinking that tonight was the night.
And again, this is something that Ozone is great at. I just applied the plugin, it did all the EQ, all the compression for me. For the most part, we have a little bit of compression at the very top of the bus here. And I like to compress in stages, so a little bit at a time in multiple stages, I find will get the best style of compression where it's not clamped down, where it leaves your tracks sounding really pumpy. But this thing sounds awesome. I think I'm ready to give it a listen from top to bottom and see what we've created here today.
Was it a four-door Chevy that we pulled off on State Line Road? Was it throwback Kenny? I couldn't tell you the song on the radio. All I know was it was something. Could have been the tequila, or was it your of a dress.